as I'm delighted to say, for our last segment, as we do every single week on the podcast, joining us, or returning guest, is Sandra Brobbey, WSL expert and sports journalist from the Sun newspaper, to chat all things West Ham women. Sandra, great to have you back with us again. We appreciate you giving us your time as always. And it's not been a great week for West Ham, to be honest. Thrashed 6-0 at Chelsea in the League Cup semi-final last Thursday. Probably an expected result, to be fair. Obviously, being on the end of a 6-0 is never good. But more worryingly is the 1-1 draw at Bristol City on Sunday in the WSL, which leaves them 11th, just 2 points off the bottom. And I mean, we'll start with that game, I think, because it's most recent. We were chatting a lot of the time this season, and I've been guilty of it most weeks, Sandra, saying, oh, you know, Bristol City are bottom and they look doomed, so luckily there's only one relegation spot in the WSL, so the girls should be safe. Matt Beard, former West Ham manager, of course, has gone in there, seems to have transformed their fortunes almost overnight. Even the first game they lost, they put in a good performance. You know, West Ham getting just a point there at the weekend. That was a massive must-win game for the girls. And all of a sudden, relegation looks like a very real threat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that's going in West Ham's favour, I guess, is the game in hand. But, I mean, Bristol are going under some kind of resurgence under Matt Beard. I mean, he was relishing that West Ham game. I mean, I spoke to him just after Bristol beat Leicester to make it to the League Cup finals. And he was just saying that, you know, I said to him, well, you know, what are your thoughts about facing West Ham? He says, well, look, I'm the Bristol boss now, and you know, my thoughts are just on Bristol. But I think they were feeling confident that they were going to win it. They were disappointed that they didn't win at the weekend. So, and obviously the run of games that West Ham have got coming up. I mean, you've got Brighton tomorrow, and then you've got a Brighton who are probably going to be absolutely charged because they're, you know, the only team to beat Chelsea in 2 years. And then after that, after the international break, you've got Chelsea again, who are, you know, probably going to be furious that they've, you know, lost that unbeaten run, plus a Birmingham City side that have strengthened as well with some good young talent in Ruby Mace from Arsenal, Emily Murphy from Chelsea, and then Man United. But I think with West Ham, the challenge at the moment is the goal scoring in the league. I mean, you know, obviously prior to being hammered by Chelsea in that semis and the League Cup, they
unintended, I hope.
Sorry.
Yeah. that sort of thing's always welcome on this podcast, Sandra. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but prior to being defeated by Chelsea in that the league, you know, the League Cup semis, they had a decent performance against Durham, who've been doing well in the Championship. I know it's the league below, but you know, Durham are unbeaten in the Championship. But it's just, I think goals is an issue for them at the moment, and I think Rachel Daly definitely, you know, her creativity not being there is a bit of a loss. And then obviously they've you know, lost Alicia Lehrman on loan. I say lost, but she's gone on loan. And then, you know, I think that there's something in terms of more impetus up front in terms of the attack.
Where do you think, before I let the lads jump in, Sandra, where do you think that's going to come from, though? Because like I say, when clubs change managers, as we've seen at Bristol that we've already mentioned, Matt Beard's gone in there, and whatever it is, just that new manager energy seems to be seeping its way into their team and their squad already. The same hasn't really happened, it seems, with Olli Harder at West Ham. And like you say, you mentioned the players leaving there. You feel like the squad is in a bit of almost a weaker position at this stage of proceedings in early February than perhaps it was around Christmas time, which is quite worrying because they weren't in that good shape then. Do you think that, I know you mentioned the game in hand that West Ham have got over Bristol underneath us, but can you see that attacking impetus or the points needed? Can you see them coming from anywhere, or is it's not over the top, I think, to start talking about relegation now? Would you agree?
I think they're definitely in a relegation battle. I mean, if ideally they need to win against Brighton tomorrow just to give themselves a little bit of a safety net, because Bristol are going to have a toughish game against Tottenham. You know, they're you know, apart from obviously the loss against Chelsea, Tottenham are doing decently under Rhian Skinner. I mean, hopefully they can get a point, or they can win against Brighton tomorrow to give themselves that bit of an impetus. And in terms of, you know, just new manager lift and, you know, kind of like a boost, they've signed an Icelandic international forward called Dani Brynjarsdóttir from She was from a club called Selfos, but she also played in the NWSL for Portland Thorns, won the NWSL Championship with them. I'd like to see her and just to see whether she might be able to do something up top for them. I haven't seen anything of her yet, brought in on transfer deadline day. She wasn't in the squad. I don't know I haven't checked to see what the situation is, but maybe, if we see a run out from her, she might add something to it. But they need something. They need a bit of a bounce or a lift, definitely, and definitely more goals in the league, I think, just to really help them in terms of this scrap at the bottom, because it's getting quite tight around there.
Yeah. Sandra, obviously, with a slightly unexpected relegation battle now on our hands, and obviously the change of managers, a lot of pressure already on Olli Harder. There's been a fair amount of investment from the club into the women's team. Obviously, Jack Sullivan's been given the reins for the women's club. Can West Ham women afford to be relegated? Because okay, they've not had the same sort of investment as some of the bigger clubs, the likes of City and Chelsea and Arsenal, but it's still been a decent level of investment into the women's side, and relegation from a lot of people that have seen that investment might seem like a bit of a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to hope that that's not going to be the case, and they've got enough that they can stay up. So there's a few games in March that quite that possibly challenging, but you hope that they've got enough there. I mean, it would be a shame considering, like you say, how much support and investment the club have put into the women's team, in terms of how much of a profile they've been given, how much support Jack Sullivan's given them, in terms of pushing the profile of the team. So, I mean, you'd hope that they don't go down. I mean, you've seen what's happened with them, obviously with Liverpool going down, and how challenging and competitive it is in the Championship at the moment. Obviously, people are thinking they'd instantly come back up again, but then who knew that Leicester would come from nowhere, and Durham, and obviously Sheffield United as well, and it's quite competitive down in that division. So fingers crossed for West Ham that they can survive this and bounce back in the league and turn their form around.
Sandra, obviously we've mentioned it a little bit, but the 6-0 loss against Chelsea in that semi-final of the League Cup is a big thing to overcome, especially so early on in Olli Harder's reign. Is there a worry that, considering the squad's lost a bit of their experience they had, like you mentioned, Lehman, Daly, is there a worry that this squad might struggle and this form could continue on? Because a result like that can really hammer in a season. How do you think they need to get over that going forward?
Well, just like you say, more goal scoring. I mean, there were times in the second half of that game where they were trying. I know these brought in like more of a pressing game and getting them to press, as much as possible. We'll see. I think we'll see what happens with Brighton. If they can do something, even if it's a draw against Brighton, it's better than a loss. That hopefully they might get some momentum from that. The international break might be a welcome break, possibly just to kind of like regroup, I think, and just to have some time off and just away from a slightly difficult run this month, certainly, in terms of some of the games. But I mean, I hope if they lose tomorrow, that's a bit problematic.
Grim is the word. Yeah. You just
want at least a point or to like, or pick up the win so they can just get the things going again this year in particular, and to give Harder his first win and to just take that pressure, I guess, a little bit off him.
Yeah, I think that's what, obviously, like you mentioned, the win he got against Durham, which is good. It's that league win that he really wants to get under his belt, and I think everyone connected with the club would have highlighted Sunday as the best opportunity to do that. Just obviously, understandably, Sandra, it's been a bit of a dour sort of conversation so far, given the form of West Ham in the last week. It's almost inevitable, unfortunately. I think it's definitely worth noting on that League Cup result. Obviously 6-0 is not a good way to finish it, but getting to the League Cup semi-final is still a big achievement. So at the beginning of the season, if you'd put that down as where the girls would have ended up getting down to the last four, that's definitely to be applauded. So obviously a shame the way it finished. But on that note of trying to extract some positivity where we can, looking forward, where would you, if there's some West Ham women's fans listening to this at the moment going, it's not been a good couple of months. I'm not massively enthused about Olli Harder. We've lost Rachel Daly, etc., etc. All the things we've touched on. If you were asked to inject a bit of hope into those fans about the prospects for the coming weeks and months, what would you say to them?
Well, just to look out for Danny Brynjarsdottir in her debut, to see what she can bring to the team, to see whether she can add some impetus into their attack. I mean, like you say, reaching the semis was a good achievement, a decent performance against Durham. If they can pick up a point or all the points tomorrow, then that would make all the difference. It would give them something kind of like, a nice win before the international break, something to build on going forward for the rest of the season. I mean, I guess that the pluses are it's quite tight down there, and they do have that game in hand, and they've been doing reasonably well in the league for some time now. So I'm sure they've got enough in there that they should be able to stay up with quality in the squad, and a lot of experience, and and a great captain in Gilly Flaherty. So hopefully they'll have enough in there to stay up.
Absolutely. Well, 12 games, 8 points for the girls so far. Bristol City bottom, 13 games, 6 points. Just the one win for them so far this season. And Aston Villa in 10th, 2 points above West Ham on 10 points. Birmingham in 9th on 11. So like you say, if they manage to get a win against Brighton, who are in 8th, that puts them 1 point behind Brighton, and all of a sudden they're back in the mix up with all those other teams. It is just getting that first one for Olli Harder. So fingers crossed for the girls. As Sandra mentioned there, that's Brighton away in the WSL on Wednesday night, 7:00 kickoff before Chelsea at home in the next game in the league. Well, Sandra, we really appreciate you joining us as ever. We've all got our fingers crossed for the girls and for Olli Harder. That's just somewhere, that's all it needs at the moment. It's just for one of those results to drop and give them all a little bit of a boost, and then it doesn't look so grim. But very much a make or break game that at Brighton tomorrow night. Sandra, appreciate you joining us. That is nearly it for the show tonight.